It's fair to say that a lot of Apple devices are overrated these days. I would argue this one's underrated though. It's the AirPort Express 2. First released in 2012, it's impressive how useful this thing has remained over the last 12 years. Unlike a lot of tech from the 2020s, this one really does just work. A cross between a wireless router and a Wi-Fi range extender, the AirPort Express 2 is just one of several routers Apple released from the late 90s to early 2010s. Back in the day, Apple made a lot of routers. To cut a long story short though, this model was the second to last one released before they quit the Wi-Fi router market entirely. I'm using mine to convert a regular wired hi-fi speaker to support AirPlay 2 audio streaming. I'll show you that later though, because that's just one of the features bestowed upon the AirPort Express 2. If it weren't already obvious by the way, Apple do not make these anymore. They were officially discontinued in 2018, but there are so many on the used market still. The going price is about 25 UK pounds, roughly $30. That's what I paid for mine, although when these were being sold new, they cost $99. There are 5 ports on this thing. Ethernet WAN port for plugging into your router or other network source, Ethernet LAN port for plugging other devices in such as PCs or games consoles or daisy chaining more routers, USB 2.0 which you can plug something like a printer into so it can print wirelessly from your phone, then lastly there's the audio jack. The 3.5mm port works as both an analog aux input and an optical digital one. Using an optical cable can give you lots of benefits if you're plugging into a high-end sound system. Less cable interference and the ability to separate into more channels are 2 examples. Putting an audio output on this thing might not have been top of Apple's to-do list when they designed it. These days though, it's one of the standout features that made me really want one so badly. So this is exactly what I'm doing with my AirPort Express 2. Firstly, it needs a power source. Ideally somewhere central to my living area so I can get the best wireless signal from it. Then I plug it into my existing Wi-Fi network. With the AirPort utility app included in macOS, I can customize the setup of the Express 2. I'm setting it up to extend an existing network, since I have it plugged into the Wi-Fi router I already own. So it's basically acting as a daisy chain now. It's just taking the wired connection from my home router and making it stronger, essentially, since it's closer to my devices. The AirPort Express makes its own network name for you to connect to. Once this is set up, I can use the audio jack to plug in my wired speaker. I was initially going to use my surround setup, but I actually prefer the sound from my Bowers & Wilkins Zeppelin. I'm just using a 3.5mm aux cable to go from the Express 2 to the speaker. The router has built-in AirPlay connectivity and was actually given a firmware update to support AirPlay 2 in 2017. So I can select it from the iPhone control center and now I'm streaming music to my speaker using AirPlay 2. It's really that simple. I almost feel like I should have gone into more detail explaining how this thing works or how complicated the setup was, but there's just so little to add. Like I said earlier, this thing just works, and I'm immensely happier because of it. I should, at this point of the video, say though, this isn't something everyone has a need for. A lot of speakers support AirPlay 2 already, and it's fair to say you won't gain anything from buying this if yours do. Also, range is often the problem for Wi-Fi networks, especially at home where a funny shaped building can lead to certain rooms just being cut off with patchy signal at the best of times. The AirPort Express 2 has helped me fix this problem, giving me flawless Wi-Fi connectivity throughout my living space. If you're struggling with the raw speed of your network though, a stronger wireless signal from an extra router like this probably won't help all that much. You're much better off trying to use a direct Ethernet cable from your router to your computer. For those who need it though, I can honestly say the AirPort Express 2 is one of those old pieces of kit that's really almost timeless. It supports both 2.4 and 5 GHz bands simultaneously, and can connect to up to 50 devices. Those are still modern standards. Remember, the firmware in this thing was getting patched right the way to 2019, so it's not as stuck in 2012 as one might think. Another benefit to owning one of these is, it's one of the few pieces of home technology that's not a relative eyesore wherever it's placed. Apple nailed the design in several ways. Firstly, the white matched with white cables is so much cleaner than some shiny black plastic router with mismatched cabling. The size is quite impressive too. I expected the Express 2 to be closer to a Mac Mini in size, but it's actually near identical in footprint to an Apple TV 4K. It doesn't seem to have much wasted space inside, although it's not easy to dismantle, so I didn't. Wi-Fi routers always seem to make things slightly too complicated when it comes to LEDs. There's one light on the AirPort Express 2, and that changes colour depending on what's going on. If you're connected to the internet, it's a solid green colour. If you're not, it's more of a flashing yellow. Part of the key to making a device like this last so long has to be keeping things simple, and simplicity is something Apple definitely baked into it, both inside and out. Soon enough, I'll be connecting the router to my computer via an Ethernet cable. This will help me get a more stable connection, since it's not relying on a wireless signal. It won't necessarily help speed up my internet though. The AirPort Express 2 has a hard limit of 100 megabits per second due to the Ethernet port used. Back in 2012, 100 megabit internet networks were few and far between, but these days there's a chance you have it without even realizing. Just bear this in mind if you are expecting to use this with your gigabit Ethernet or something. So if you're anything like me, the days when AirPort routers were popular were long gone before we started getting interested in technology. Before I looked into the Express 2 for this video, I actually wasn't sure what their purpose was anyway. But yeah, you can think of it like this. Having an AirPort router is like your own little private Wi-Fi router for one small area. It boosts existing signal via Ethernet or wirelessly. It gives you an AirPlay 2 output so you can stream music directly into whatever's plugged into the audio jack. It's just an all-round neat little device to lay on your desk, since if you plug in a printer, you can get wireless printing from your phone or computer too. So that's it, the Apple AirPort Express 2. Few people talk or even think about these anymore really, but thanks to 7 years of firmware updates, along with a smart design that doesn't intrude wherever it's placed, I think they are still worth considering for day-to-day use. Thank you very much for watching. Join me next week when I'll be building the weakest Intel Mac ever created. Consider subscribing too if you don't want to miss that. If older technology is your thing, we have a What's on Your Screen Discord server which you can join using the link down below. I think there's about 300 of us in the community now, and it's a really nice place to just talk about tech. Of course, a big thank you goes out to my Patreon members who help support the channel financially. That's Adrian, Oliver Wilderman, Penny, Kinda Average Tech, 4.5 Giraffes Limited, and Luma. See you guys next week.